Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how I made these bat houses. This is a 3-chambered bat house. It's not a fine woodworking project by any means with exterior grade plywood and cheap pine and glue and screws, but they are a lot of fun to make. They only take a few hours from start to finish, so stick around and I'll show you how I do it. If you like this video, please hit the like button, please subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I'll start by cutting the back out of a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. It'll be 14 inches wide by 22 inches long. The sides will use the same material. They'll be 4 inches wide by 18 inches long. So the bat house will have 3 chambers. I'm going to cut 2 partitions, one 14 inches wide by 16 inches long and the other 14 inches wide by 15 inches long. And this will both be out of 1/4 inch plywood. For the top and the front of the bat house, I'm using 3/4 inch pine. The front will have one piece that's 11 inches wide by 14 3/8 inch long and one piece that's 4 inches wide by 14 3/8 inch long. And the top's going to be 7 inches wide by 18 inches long. Here I'm cutting a 30-degree angle on the sides to make the pitch of the roof. This will make the front of the side 16 inches long and the back of the side 18 inches long. Now I can use the angle I cut on the sides to act as a template to set up a bevel cut on my table saw. I'll cut 30-degree bevels on the backboard, the top board, and one of the front pieces. Here I'm changing out the blade to a dado stack so that I can cut a rabbet in the sideboards. Once I have the dado stack installed, I will put a sacrificial fence on my table saw and bury the blade into that. This way I can get a clean cut all the way up to the edge of the sides. Now I can create the rabbets in the side pieces. They'll be 3/4 inches wide by 3/8 of an inch deep. Now I can switch back to my 10-inch blade so that I can cut the grooves for the partitions. There'll be 2 of these grooves in each side. I'll have to make the groove in 2 passes since my table saw blade isn't quite wide enough to make it in one, and the dado stack's too wide with 2 blades installed. The goal of the grooves is to make roughly 3 1-inch chambers. I'm cutting small grooves or kerfs into the partition walls and the back wall to give the bat something to grip onto when they land. You could use T111 plywood, which already has some scoring and grooving in it, or you could add some type of netting. The exterior grade plywood was in pretty rough shape, so I'm just giving all the parts a light sanding on their outer faces. I'll leave all the inside faces as rough as possible to give the bat something to grip to. Here I'm applying a water-based stain to all the inside faces of the bat house. I'm hitting out the sides, the partition walls. The only thing I'm trying to do is keep the stain away from the edges or the sides where I'm going to apply glue later. After I've given the stain some time to dry, then I'm ready to start doing some assembly. I'll apply glue to all the sides and to the edges of the partition walls in the back. Then I will put it all together, try to use some clamp, and hold it in place with some brad nails. A couple of notes here is that the back partition wall should be the longer one, the 16-inch one, and the front partition wall should be the shorter one. They don't have to fit perfectly against the top or the bottom, just somewhere in the groove. Deck screws and the glue are going to give this its structural support. I'm just using these brad nails to hold everything together while the glue dries. One last thing I want to pay attention to is that the bevel I cut on the backboard and the front board line up with the sides. I'm leaving a 1-inch space between the two boards on the front to act as a vent for the first chamber. Once everything's glued and nailed together, I'll use some 80 grit sandpaper to make sure that the front boards are flush to the side boards and knock off all the edges. Now I can install the top to the bat house. I'll make sure that I have an equal amount of overhang on each side. I'll use glue and brad nails to stick everything together at first. Then I can come back and install a couple of deck screws later. I'll drill some pilot holes and countersinks and then install some deck screws on the front boards to the sides and the side boards to the back and the top to the sides and the front board. To finish up the bat houses, I'll put a couple of coats of primer on and install a couple of coats of water-based paint. And here's the finished bat houses. They were a lot of fun to make. Bat houses are great natural insect control. I think one bat eats like 600 mosquitoes an hour or something like that. So I hope you liked the video. I hope you subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Tell me what you think.